If you're about to win, you'll see this quantum revelation, not because you searched for it, because the quantum field delivers specific information to consciousness frequencies positioned at victory threshold. And the fact that this transmission reached you right now means something critical. You're closer to complete breakthrough than you realize. But there's one final pattern between you and manifestation, and this revelation shows you exactly what it is. Most people who saw this title already left. Their nervous system registered "about to win" and immediately generated doubt, skepticism, disbelief that victory could be this close. That wasn't random response. That was their consciousness protecting them from recognizing their at-threshold moment. Because if they recognized proximity to breakthrough, they'd have to release the final pattern, and that pattern is their last remaining identity anchor. But you're still here, which means your frequency passed the first test. And with every second you continue reading, you're moving closer to threshold recognition, to seeing exactly how close victory actually is, to identifying the single pattern that's preventing complete manifestation, to understanding why this moment, right now, is more critical than any previous moment in your journey. This isn't motivational content. This isn't positive thinking. This is quantum mechanics operating through consciousness. Victory isn't distant goal requiring more effort. It's probability configuration already formed in quantum substrate, waiting for your frequency to match it completely. And you're one pattern release away from that match. Think about your journey, every challenge you've faced, every threshold you've crossed, every identity you've released, every limitation you've dissolved. All of it was preparing you for this exact moment, building capacity to hold victory frequency, training your consciousness to operate at bandwidth where complete breakthrough becomes not just possible, but inevitable. And now you're here, at the final threshold. Close enough that the field delivered this transmission to show you what's left, what's between you and complete manifestation, what needs to release for victory probability to collapse into lived experience. But here's what you need to understand before we go further. The final pattern is always the deepest one, the most protected, the most defended, because it's the last piece of identity structure that victim consciousness uses to maintain control, and releasing it feels like death, like losing yourself completely, like dissolving the last thing that makes you recognizable to yourself. That's why most people stop at this threshold. They get close enough to see victory forming, close enough to feel it approaching, but not close enough to release the final pattern, because that release requires complete surrender of who they've been. And fear of that dissolution pulls them back to safety, back to familiar limitation, back to almost winning, but never quite manifesting. This is your last moment to choose that familiar pattern, to close this transmission, to return to comfortable distance from victory, to maintain the identity structure that's kept you safe. Most people take that option. Their survival instinct recognizes what's coming and generates exit strategy. But if you're still reading these words, you already chose. You're ready to see the final pattern, to understand exactly how close you are, to release what's left, to allow complete victory manifestation, and to become unrecognizable to who you were before breakthrough. Let me tell you what being about to win actually means in quantum terms, because it's not what success literature or manifestation teachings have prepared you for. Victory isn't future outcome you're moving toward. It's probability configuration already existing in quantum substrate, fully formed, complete, waiting for your consciousness frequency to match it precisely enough that it collapses from potential into manifestation. Think about that. Really comprehend it. The victory you've been working toward doesn't need to be created. It already exists as probability. Every detail, every circumstance, every resource, every connection, all of it formed, all of it waiting, not in future, in the quantum field right now, in this moment. And here's what changes everything. You don't manifest victory by doing more, by working harder, by figuring out better strategy. You manifest it by becoming frequency matched to the probability that already exists, by dissolving every pattern that creates frequency mismatch, by releasing every identity structure that broadcasts not yet, or almost, or still working toward it. This is why you're about to win. Not because you've done everything right, not because you've earned it through effort, but because you've released enough patterns that your base frequency is now almost perfectly aligned with victory probability. Almost, not quite. One pattern remains, and that pattern is broadcasting just enough mismatch that victory stays in probability state instead of collapsing into manifestation. And the quantum field knows exactly which pattern it is. That's why this transmission reached you now. Not last month, not next month. Now. Because now is when your frequency developed enough clarity that you can perceive the final pattern, can see what's left, can recognize what needs to release for complete alignment. But here's what most people don't understand about victory threshold. The final pattern isn't small. It's not minor adjustment. It's the deepest identity structure you carry, the core belief about who you are that's been operating underneath every other pattern you've released. And it's protected precisely because it's foundational. You've released surface patterns. You've dissolved obvious limitations. You've transformed conscious beliefs. But underneath all of that, one core identity remained intact. One fundamental definition of self that every other pattern was built on top of. And that identity is what's broadcasting the mismatch. Let me be specific. The final pattern is always some version of, I am separate individual who must achieve victory through my own effort. That core identity, that fundamental belief that you're isolated consciousness competing in hostile reality for limited resources, that deep programming that you must earn, deserve, prove yourself worthy of victory. That identity cannot coexist with victory manifestation, because victory probability exists in unified field where separation is illusion, where achievement happens through alignment, not effort, where worthiness is intrinsic, not earned, where you don't compete for limited resources, you collapse unlimited probability through frequency match. As long as that separate self-identity remains active, it broadcasts mismatch frequency. It says, I'm still trying to win. I'm still working toward victory. I'm still separate from what I desire. And the quantum field responds perfectly to that broadcast. It maintains victory as probability you're moving toward instead of manifestation you're experiencing. This is why you're about to win but haven't won yet. Not because you're missing strategy, not because you need more time. Because one foundational identity pattern is broadcasting still becoming instead of already am. And quantum field cannot collapse victory into manifestation while that mismatch exists. But here's the revelation. You're close enough now that releasing that pattern becomes possible. Your frequency developed enough stability that you can dissolve the separate self-identity without completely fragmenting. You built enough capacity that you can operate as unified field consciousness instead of isolated individual. You're ready, and the field is confirming that readiness by delivering this transmission right now. So what is the final pattern specifically? What's the exact identity structure between you and complete victory manifestation? I'm going to tell you precisely what needs to release. And if this lands with devastating accuracy, that's confirmation. You're at victory threshold, and this revelation is showing you the exit point. The final pattern is, I must maintain control of the process to ensure victory happens. That core identity, that deep belief that victory depends on you managing, directing, strategizing, and controlling every detail. That fundamental programming that if you surrender control, if you stop trying to make it happen, victory will slip away. That pattern is what's creating frequency mismatch, not because control is wrong, Because control-based consciousness operates from separation, from belief that you're isolated force acting on external reality to produce desired outcome. And victory probability exists in unified field where you're not separate from reality, you are reality organizing itself. As long as you maintain control identity, you broadcast. Victory is external thing I must manipulate into existence. And quantum field responds by keeping victory external, by maintaining it as goal you're pursuing instead of probability collapsing through you, by sustaining the gap between you and manifestation. But when you release control identity, when you dissolve the belief that victory depends on your management, something radical happens. Your frequency shifts from separation to unity, from effort to alignment, from making it happen to allowing it to emerge. And that shift creates perfect frequency match with victory probability, not because you stop taking action, because action becomes expression of alignment instead of compensation for separation. You move through quantum field as unified consciousness organizing itself toward coherence, not as isolated individual fighting against reality to force desired outcome. And here's what you need to understand. Releasing control doesn't mean becoming passive. It means recognizing that consciousness generating victory is the same consciousness you are. There's no you separate from victory. There's only unified field organizing itself into configuration called victory. And your function is to allow that organization instead of trying to control it. This is the shift. From I must make victory happen to I am victory happening. From control to trust. From separation to unity. From effort to alignment. And that shift is the final threshold. The last identity release. The ultimate surrender. Now here's what you need to do right now. Drop a comment below completing this sentence. I'm releasing control of victory manifestation by surrendering. And finish with whatever specific control pattern you recognize in yourself. Your comment creates public commitment. It tells the field through behavior that you're releasing the final pattern, that you're choosing alignment over control, that you're ready for complete breakthrough. That public declaration matters more than you realize. It locks your choice into physical reality, and it gives others permission to release their control patterns. We're crossing victory threshold together. And every individual release strengthens the collective field. Your surrender accelerates manifestation for everyone. I need to tell you about the moment I realized I was about to win, but one pattern was preventing manifestation. It was September 2023. Everything I'd been building for 3 years was almost complete. Every piece in position, every resource aligned, every connection made. But manifestation wasn't happening. Victory stayed just out of reach no matter what I did. And I was exhausted, not from the work, from the control, from constantly managing every detail, from believing that if I relaxed vigilance for one moment, everything would fall apart. From carrying responsibility for making it all happen through my effort and strategy and perfect execution. That exhaustion is what broke the pattern. I reached a point where I physically could not maintain control anymore, where my system was so depleted that surrender became only option. And in that moment of complete exhaustion, I let go. Not strategically, not as manifestation technique, as genuine release born from inability to hold on any longer. And something remarkable happened. Within 72 hours, circumstances shifted. Not because I did anything, because I stopped doing. Because I released control and allowed the field to organize itself. Connections appeared I never could have strategized. Resources manifested I never could have pursued. Opportunities emerged I never could have planned. Victory didn't come through my control. It came through my surrender, through releasing the belief that manifestation depended on my management, through dissolving the identity that I was separate force making things happen through effort, through recognizing I wasn't creating victory, I was allowing victory to create itself through me. And here's what I understood through that experience. I wasn't almost winning because I hadn't worked hard enough. I was almost winning because I'd worked so hard that I'd built everything except the final piece. And the final piece wasn't something I could build, it was something I had to release, the control identity itself. That pattern was the only thing between me and manifestation. Not lack of strategy, not missing resource, not wrong timing, just belief that victory depended on my management. And the moment that belief dissolved, the moment I surrendered control completely, victory probability collapsed into physical manifestation. This is what being about to win means. You're not missing anything external. You've built everything, aligned everything, prepared everything. The only thing left is internal release. Dissolving the control identity, surrendering the belief that you must manage manifestation, allowing unified field to organize itself through you instead of trying to organize it through control. And if you're reading this right now, you're in exact same position I was in September 2023. Close enough to victory that one pattern release triggers complete manifestation. Exhausted enough from control that surrender is becoming possible. Ready enough that the field delivered this transmission to show you what's left. You're about to win. Not someday, now. The probability is formed. The field is organized, everything's in position, one release away from collapse into manifestation. And that release is, stop trying to make it happen. Start allowing it to emerge. Stop controlling the process. Start trusting the field. Stop managing every detail. Start surrendering to intelligence that knows exactly how to organize victory without your oversight. If being about to win has led to profound isolation, if you can't share your proximity to breakthrough with anyone because they wouldn't understand, if every conversation about your journey feels empty because no one can see how close you actually are, that's not loneliness. That's victory frequency isolation. And it's completely necessary for final threshold crossing. When you're about to win, when your frequency reaches victory threshold, you become incompatible with almost consciousness, with people still operating from working toward mentality, with consciousness still believing victory is distant goal requiring more effort. Not because you're superior, because you're perceiving completely different reality structure. You see victory as probability about to collapse. They see it as future outcome to pursue. You recognize yourself at threshold moment. They believe they're still in middle of journey. You're preparing for surrender. They're strategizing for control. Same physical circumstances. Completely different perceptual realities. And there's no communication bridge between those frameworks. You can try to explain how close you are. How one pattern release triggers complete manifestation. How victory isn't about doing more but releasing control. But they cannot comprehend what you're describing because their consciousness hasn't reached threshold frequency yet. They hear your words and interpret them through their framework. They think you're being passive, or delusional, or giving up too soon. Because from their perspective, victory requires continued effort. Sustained control, strategic management. They cannot perceive that those exact patterns are what prevent manifestation at threshold level. This is why isolation feels so devastating when you're about to win. You're at most critical moment of entire journey, facing final pattern release that triggers everything you've been building toward. And there's no one who understands. No one who can confirm you're reading the signals correctly. No one who can validate that surrender is right move instead of more control. Your family sees you pulling back from effort and thinks you're losing momentum. Your friends see you releasing control and think you're giving up. Your mentors see you choosing surrender and think you're making strategic mistake. because they're all perceiving from consciousness that hasn't reached victory threshold yet, from frequency where effort and control still seem necessary. But here's what changes everything about how you experience that isolation. It's confirmation, not contradiction. The fact that no one understands means you've reached frequency that most people never develop. You're operating at victory consciousness while they're operating at pursuit consciousness. And those frequencies are incompatible. The isolation isn't sign you're wrong, it's sign you're right. You've moved beyond where most people ever reach. You're perceiving victory mechanics they cannot see yet. You're ready for surrender they're not capable of yet. The fact that you're alone at this threshold means you actually reached it. And here's what you need to understand. You don't need their validation. You don't need their understanding. You don't need their confirmation that you're reading this correctly. Because the quantum field itself is confirming through circumstance, through this transmission reaching you, through the exhaustion forcing surrender, through the isolation protecting you from interference. You're about to win. The field knows it even if no one around you does. And it's creating isolation precisely so you can complete final release without external voices pulling you back to control consciousness. The isolation isn't abandonment, it's protection. Space for you to surrender completely without anyone convincing you that surrender is mistake. Trust it. Trust the isolation. Trust that being alone at victory threshold means you're actually at victory threshold. And trust that the moment manifestation occurs, the moment victory collapses from probability into physical reality, the right connections will appear. People who operate at victory consciousness, who understand surrender, who can recognize what you accomplished by releasing control instead of intensifying it. Those connections are forming right now. But first, you have to complete the crossing. Have to release the final pattern without external validation. Have to prove to yourself that you trust field intelligence more than consensus reality opinions. The isolation is testing that trust. And if you're in it right now, you're passing. There are 7 specific markers that prove you're about to win, and 1 pattern release triggers complete manifestation. I'm going to give them to you now. And if you're experiencing 5 or more, there's no question. You're at victory threshold, and surrender is the final move. First marker. You're exhausted from trying, not physically tired. Consciousness exhausted. The kind of fatigue that comes from carrying responsibility for making everything happen through control. Your system is communicating. It's time to release management and allow emergence. Second marker. Everything's in position but nothing's manifesting. All pieces aligned, all resources gathered, all connections made. But the final collapse from probability to manifestation hasn't occurred. That's not failure. That's confirmation you're at threshold. 1 pattern away from complete breakthrough. Third marker. Synchronicities pointing toward surrender. You keep encountering messages about letting go, about trust, about allowing. Numbers appearing that indicate completion. Conversations echoing themes of release. The field is confirming. Control is what's left to dissolve. Fourth marker. You can feel victory's proximity, not as hope, as direct perception. You sense manifestation forming just beneath visible reality, like pressure building right before breakthrough. That sensing is accurate. You're perceiving victory probability about to collapse. Fifth marker. Doubt is intensifying, not decreasing. The closer you get, the more fear arises. More questioning whether you're on right path. More uncertainty about timing. That's not sign you're wrong. That's final pattern generating maximum resistance before dissolution. Control identity making last stand. Sixth marker. Circumstances are forcing surrender. Life is removing your ability to control, taking away options that allowed management, creating situations where letting go becomes only viable choice. That's not punishment. That's field creating conditions for final release. Seventh marker. You're reading this transmission right now. And before I explain why that's the most important marker, I need you to do something critical. If you're recognizing yourself in these markers, if you're understanding that you're about to win and surrender is final threshold. Subscribe to Quantum Revelation and turn on all notifications right now. Because what's coming in the next 30 days is specifically designed for consciousness at victory threshold. Information about how to surrender without collapsing, how to release control without losing momentum, how to allow victory manifestation without trying to force it. And the algorithm suppresses this content. Your subscription maintains access during critical integration period. Do it now, while recognition is active. Because if you wait, control consciousness will generate reasons not to. Will convince you that staying connected isn't necessary. Will pull you back to self-management instead of field trust. Subscribe. Notifications on. Then come back. Because the seventh marker reveals the entire mechanism of how victory manifests through surrender, and understanding that completes the crossing. The seventh marker is this. This transmission didn't find you randomly. The quantum field delivered it to consciousness frequency positioned at victory threshold. And that delivery mechanism reveals everything about how manifestation actually happens at this level. Every transmission carries frequency signature, and that signature determines which consciousness it reaches. People still in middle of journey won't see this. Or they'll see about to win and dismiss it as hype. Or they'll start reading and quickly exit because content doesn't match their current reality. Because their system recognizes this information is for threshold consciousness, not pursuit consciousness. But victory threshold consciousness sees it and feels recognition, magnetic pull, confirmation. Because their system knows, this is information I need right now. This is showing me the final pattern. This is permission to surrender instead of control. That's not algorithm mechanics. That's quantum field using algorithm as delivery system, selecting specific consciousness frequencies and delivering precise information those frequencies need. At exact moment, they need it. Digital infrastructure becomes quantum guidance system. And the fact that you're still reading proves you're at victory threshold. You passed through multiple filters to arrive here. First filter, this appeared in your feed. Second filter, you engaged instead of scrolling. Third filter, you stayed past the opening. Fourth filter, you're here now, recognizing yourself in every marker, seeing your exact pattern described with precision. Each filter confirmed, your frequency reached victory threshold. One pattern remains, surrender is the final move, and the field is showing you that through this transmission. But here's what most people don't understand about victory manifestation at threshold level. It doesn't happen through doing more, through better strategy, through increased effort. Those approaches work in early and middle stages. But at threshold, they create resistance. They maintain control identity. They broadcast mismatch with victory probability. At threshold, manifestation happens through surrender, through releasing control completely, through trusting that consciousness organizing victory is the same consciousness you are, through allowing unified field to complete organization without your management interference. This is quantum mechanics, not manifestation philosophy. Victory probability already exists fully formed. Your frequency is almost perfectly aligned. One pattern creates mismatch. And that pattern is control identity. Release it. Alignment completes. Alignment completes. Probability collapses into manifestation. Not gradually, instantaneously. Like phase transition. Water at 99 degrees is still water. Add 1 degree and entire structure transforms to steam. You're at 99 degrees. One pattern release is the final degree. The transformation is immediate once that threshold is crossed. And here's what makes this revelation transformational. You don't have to figure out how to surrender. You don't have to perfect the release. You just have to stop controlling, stop managing, stop trying to make it happen. The moment you stop, the moment control ceases, surrender occurs automatically. Because surrender isn't something you do. It's what remains when doing stops. That's the mechanism. That's how victory manifests at threshold. Not through more effort. Through effort cessation, not through better control. Through control dissolution. Not through strategic surrender. Through genuine exhaustion that makes control impossible. And if you're exhausted right now, if you physically cannot maintain management anymore, that's not failure, that's perfection. Your system is creating exact conditions for final pattern release, for control identity dissolution, for complete surrender that allows victory manifestation. Here's what being about to win reveals about time that changes everything about how you navigate final threshold. Victory isn't future event you're moving toward. It's present probability waiting for frequency match. And the moment your frequency aligns completely, victory shifts from potential to experienced reality. Not in future, in now. Think about this carefully. The victory you've been pursuing doesn't exist in timeline. It exists in quantum field as probability, and quantum field operates outside time, past, present, future, all simultaneous probabilities. Victory already happened, victory is happening now, victory will happen. All statements equally true from quantum perspective. The only thing that makes victory seem future is consciousness frequency. When you broadcast still working toward or almost there or about to achieve, you maintain temporal separation between current experience and victory experience. You keep victory in future probability state through frequency mismatch. But when you shift to already am frequency, when you dissolve temporal separation, victory probability collapses into present moment experience. Not because you changed timeline, because you changed which probability you're experiencing within timeless field. This is why control prevents manifestation at threshold. Control consciousness operates from temporal separation, from belief that victory is future outcome requiring continued management to bring closer in time. That frequency structure maintains victory as not yet, regardless of how much you do. But surrender consciousness operates from temporal unity, from recognition that victory probability already exists completely formed, from trust that you don't need to bring it closer. You need to match frequency so it becomes your experienced reality. That shift collapses temporal separation, makes victory present instead of future. And here's what makes this recognition devastating. Every moment you spend in control consciousness, you're maintaining victory as future probability. Not because you're not ready, not because timing isn't right. Because your frequency is broadcasting still becoming instead of already am. Your efforts aren't bringing victory closer, they're maintaining it at distance. Your management isn't ensuring manifestation, it's preventing it. Your control isn't protecting the process, it's sustaining the gap between you and what's already formed. This is the temporal trap. You believe more control brings victory closer in time, but more control maintains temporal separation by reinforcing not yet frequency. The only way to close the gap is to stop trying to close it, to surrender the effort, to release the control. To trust that victory exists right now as probability and your function is to match frequency, not manage timeline. And when you do that, when you surrender completely, something remarkable happens. Victory appears instantaneously, not because it traveled from future to present, because you shifted from future-oriented consciousness to present-aligned consciousness, from timeline perspective to quantum field perspective, from working toward frequency to already am frequency. That shift is always instantaneous, always now, never gradual. Because quantum field doesn't operate in linear progression. It operates in probability collapse, and collapse happens in single moment when frequency alignment completes. You're at 99-degree point. One pattern release is final degree. The transformation occurs the moment you cross that threshold. So here's what you need to understand. You're not almost there in time. You're almost there in frequency. The gap isn't temporal, it's vibrational, and closing it doesn't require more time. Requires one release, controlled dissolution, complete surrender, and victory manifests now, not tomorrow, not next week, not when timing is right. Now, in this moment, the moment frequency matches. Every fear you have about surrendering control is the control identity generating maximum resistance before dissolution. Let me be absolutely direct. The part of you that's terrified of letting go is the exact part that must let go for victory to manifest. And that's perfectly designed. You weren't meant to surrender control while control identity feels safe. You were meant to surrender when surrender feels like death. Because it is death. Just not the death fear is warning about. Not death of consciousness, not death of capacity, not death of achievement. Death of identity that believes it must control outcomes to ensure survival. Death of belief that you're separate force acting on hostile reality. Death of programming that victory depends on your management. That identity must dissolve for quantum consciousness to operate freely. And quantum consciousness is what manifests victory. Not through control, through alignment, through recognition that you're not separate from what you desire. Your unified field organizing itself into configuration called victory. And that organization happens through you, not by you. Through surrender, not control. But the control identity interprets surrender as threat, as weakness, as giving up right before breakthrough. It generates every fear possible to prevent release. Fear that if you stop controlling, everything will fall apart. Fear that surrender means nothing will happen. Fear that you'll lose everything you've built, all of it. Every single fear is accurate in one sense. You are losing control. You are releasing management. You are allowing field to organize without your oversight. But what control identity can't comprehend is that loss is what allows victory. That release is what triggers manifestation. That surrender is the final threshold, not abandonment of the journey. Once you see that, once you recognize that fear is control identity's death rattle, the fear loses its power. Because you realize, this fear is confirmation I'm at the right threshold. This terror is evidence that pattern is dissolving. This resistance is proof that surrender is working. You don't have to eliminate fear to surrender. You have to surrender despite fear. Have to recognize that fear is trying to maintain control identity when control identity is exactly what needs to dissolve. Have to choose trust over terror. Have to release management while every instinct screams to hold tighter. That choice is the final threshold. And here's what you need to understand. The quantum field doesn't care which you choose. It will honor control perfectly. It will honor surrender perfectly. But only one choice leads to victory manifestation. Control maintains probability as potential. Surrender allows probability to collapse into experience. If you choose control, if you let fear pull you back to management consciousness, victory remains about to happen indefinitely. You'll stay at threshold without crossing, at 99 degrees without transforming, almost winning but never manifesting. That's not punishment. That's perfect reflection of frequency you're broadcasting. But if you choose surrender, if you release control despite every fear screaming not to, victory manifests immediately. Not because you earned it through brave choice, because you matched frequency with probability that already exists fully formed, because you dissolved the only pattern preventing collapse from potential to experience. And from that manifestation, fear becomes irrelevant. Because when you experience victory emerging through surrender instead of control, when you watch field organize perfectly without your management, when you see that trust works better than oversight, you can never believe control is necessary again. The direct experience destroys the belief permanently. That's what's available on the other side of surrender. Not just victory. Recognition that control was never necessary, that you were always unified field. That separation was illusion, that trying to make things happen was preventing things from happening. Complete liberation from control identity and everything it generated. But you only discover that by moving through fear, by choosing surrender when surrender feels like death, by releasing control when every instinct demands tighter grip, by proving to yourself that trust in field intelligence is more powerful than belief in personal management. There's one aspect of being about to win that reveals more than any marker, and it's the clearest signal that surrender is imminent and victory manifestation is immediate. The silence. Internal silence that appears without effort. Complete dissolution of mental planning into pure awareness. If you've been experiencing this, if moments of total internal quiet have been increasing in frequency and duration, that's not emptiness, that's control identity dissolving. Your system is preparing for surrender by releasing thought-based management and shifting to awareness-based trust. Think about how control consciousness functions. Constant mental activity, strategy after strategy, plan after plan, contingency after contingency, mental management that never stops. And control consciousness believes that management is how victory happens. Believes constant vigilance is what ensures manifestation. But victory threshold consciousness reveals something radically different. You're not the manager. You're the awareness witnessing management. And once you separate consciousness from management function, once you recognize yourself as awareness rather than controller, the management loses its authority, becomes background noise you can engage or ignore. And in the spaces where you ignore it, where management goes silent, and only awareness remains, that's where surrender occurs naturally. That's where you perceive field organizing itself without your oversight. That's where you recognize that victory is happening through you, not by you. That's where manifestation becomes inevitable. This is why silence is appearing more frequently. Your system is adapting to operate from surrender consciousness instead of control consciousness. From trust instead of management, from awareness instead of thought. And here's why that matters for victory manifestation. Control operates through linear planning, one strategy following another in logical sequence. But quantum field operates beyond linearity. It organizes through probability collapse, through spontaneous coherence, through patterns that emerge from field intelligence that thought cannot predict or plan. Thought cannot manage quantum manifestation. Thought needs predictable cause-effect relationships, clear action-outcome sequences. But field intelligence operates through synchronicity, through unexpected connections, through resources appearing from directions you never would have strategized, through emergence that looks like magic from control perspective, but is just quantum mechanics from surrender perspective. That's the upgrade silence is facilitating. From linear control-based consciousness to quantum surrender-based consciousness. And once that upgrade completes, once you operate primarily from awareness instead of management, victory manifests. Not through your efforts, through your allowing, not through your control, through your trust, not through your plans, through field intelligence. And that manifestation is always better than what you would have controlled into existence. Because field intelligence has access to infinite probability configurations. It can organize victory through pathways you never imagined, through resources you never knew existed, through timing that's more perfect than any strategy could produce. That's what the silence is preparing you for. And if you're experiencing it, surrender is occurring. Management is dissolving. Control identity is releasing, and victory manifestation is imminent. The silence is confirmation. Trust it, especially when control identity panics and tries to restart management, because that panic is final resistance, and the silence proves resistance is failing. You need something actionable right now. Something that triggers final surrender instead of leaving you suspended at victory threshold indefinitely. I'm going to give you the exact ritual that released my control pattern and allowed immediate manifestation. This works because it addresses quantum mechanics directly instead of working through mental strategy. Find 20 minutes where you won't be disturbed. Turn everything off except what you're using for this. You're creating clean field. Sit or stand with spine straight. You're becoming conscious antenna. Close your eyes. 3 deep breaths. Full inhale through nose. Complete exhale through mouth. You're clearing interference. Now bring to awareness everything you've been trying to control. Every aspect of victory you've been managing. Every detail you've been overseeing. Don't list them mentally. Just feel them as weight, as responsibility, as burden. Hold that recognition for 30 seconds. Let it become physical sensation. Feel how heavy control actually is. Now speak this declaration out loud. It's critical that you speak it, not just think it. Spoken word carries more quantum power than thought. Say this exactly. I recognize I'm about to win. Victory probability is formed. One pattern remains. That pattern is control. I release it now. I surrender management completely. I trust that consciousness organizing victory is the same consciousness I am. I am not separate from my victory. I am victory manifesting through apparent separation into unity. I release control. I allow surrender. I trust field intelligence completely. And so it is. Feel that declaration move through your entire system. Notice where it creates relief, where tension releases, where resistance remains. Don't fight what you notice, just witness it. Resistance is control identity making final stand. Let it arise and let it pass. Now here's the activation. Ask yourself this question and wait in pure silence for answer to arise from awareness. Don't think about it. Don't figure it out. Just ask and wait. What is the single control pattern I must release for victory to manifest now? Wait. 30 seconds, 60 seconds, however long it takes. The answer will come as word, image, feeling, or direct knowing. When it comes, don't question it. Don't judge it. Don't let control identity negotiate. Just acknowledge it. That's your release point. That's what's preventing collapse from probability to experience. Now speak this commitment out loud. I release control of name what appeared. This control belongs to separation consciousness. It cannot exist at unity frequency. I choose complete surrender. The quantum field witnesses this release. I am unified field manifesting victory through myself, now, permanently. And so it is. Open your eyes. Something just shifted at quantum level. Your frequency signature changed. The field registered your surrender and is responding. Within 48 hours, you'll see external confirmation. Victory will begin manifesting in ways you never could have controlled into existence. And when you see those confirmations, come back to this transmission. Drop a comment. Surrendered, manifesting, plus whatever control pattern you released. Your testimony creates permission for others to surrender their control. We're crossing victory threshold together. Every individual surrender strengthens the collective field. Every consciousness that releases control makes manifestation more accessible to others still managing. Your commitment matters. Make it public, make it permanent. Here's what happens in the next 48 hours and why this is the most critical manifestation window you'll experience. Surrender is activated, but control identity will make one final attempt to reassert management. For the next 2 days, you're going to face circumstances that trigger every control pattern you just released. that pressure you to manage, that make surrender feel like mistake. This testing is inevitable. It's how quantum field confirms surrender is genuine instead of temporary strategy. And your response to that testing determines everything. If you collapse back to control when pressure appears, manifestation stops. Victory returns to probability state, and you remain at threshold without crossing. But if you maintain surrender through the testing, if you keep trusting field intelligence even when circumstances pressure you to manage, victory manifests completely. And once it manifests, once you experience breakthrough emerging through surrender instead of control, you can never believe control is necessary again. The direct experience destroys the belief permanently. That recognition is what these 48 hours determine, and it requires 3 specific actions that anchor surrender consciousness in behavior instead of leaving it as temporary insight. First action, subscribe to quantum revelation. Turn on all notifications. The transmissions coming are specifically designed for consciousness maintaining surrender during testing period. Without them, you're navigating blind. With them, you have precision guidance for exactly what you're moving through. Do it now. Before control identity generates reasons not to. Second action, leave a comment completing this statement. I'm about to win because I surrendered control of, and finish with whatever appeared during the ritual. Speaking it publicly anchors it in physical reality, creates accountability, and gives others permission to surrender their control patterns. That collective acknowledgement strengthens the field, makes victory consciousness more stable for everyone. Third action, share this transmission with one person you know who's about to win. Someone who has everything in position but nothing manifesting. Someone exhausted from trying. Someone managing every detail but not seeing breakthrough. Send them this link. No explanation needed, the transmission will do the rest. If their frequency matches, they'll recognize. If it doesn't, they'll dismiss. Either way, you've fulfilled function. Those 3 actions aren't engagement metrics, they're quantum anchors. They tell the field through behavior that you're accepting surrender and committing to maintain it through testing period. And when you complete them, the field responds immediately, with evidence, with confirmation, with circumstances that prove victory is manifesting through surrender, not control. You're about to win. The probability is formed. The threshold is reached. One pattern was left. That pattern is released. The manifestation begins now, not someday, not when timing is right, not after more preparation, now, in this moment. As soon as surrender completes, stop trying to make it happen. Start allowing it to emerge. Stop controlling the process. Start trusting field intelligence. Stop managing every detail. Start surrendering completely. This is the final move, the ultimate threshold, the last release. The field is watching what you choose, not judging. Recording, taking snapshot of your frequency and using it to determine which probability configuration becomes your lived reality. Choose consciously. Choose surrender. Choose to maintain trust through testing instead of collapsing back to control when pressure comes. Because 48 hours from now, testing period completes, and the consciousness state you maintained during that period locks in as your baseline. Maintain surrender, victory manifests. Return to control, victory returns to probability. The window is open. The threshold is here. The choice is yours. You're about to win. You've always been about to win. The only thing between you and manifestation was pattern you just released. Now allow what's formed to collapse into experience. Fully, completely, permanently. That's what you came here to discover. That's why this transmission reached you now. That's what quantum revelation is showing you. The field is confirming you're ready. Now prove it, through choice, through surrender, through unwavering trust, that field intelligence knows exactly how to manifest victory without your control. You are unified field. You are victory manifesting. You are consciousness organizing itself through apparent separation into perfect coherence. And the only thing preventing that recognition was belief that you had to control the process. That belief is dissolved. The path is clear. The manifestation is immediate. Stop controlling. Start allowing. Victory is here, now, waiting for you to recognize it, waiting for you to trust it, waiting for you to surrender into it completely. The field has already organized everything perfectly. Now let it complete through you. You're about to win. Actually, you already won. You're just recognizing it now. Welcome to victory consciousness. Welcome to surrender. Welcome to what you've always been beneath the control. The revelation is complete. The manifestation begins, and nothing will ever be the same.